I want to thank everybody for coming to our hopefully first of many sessions on doing more with your Bouvier. And this is we're going to be talking about primarily entry-level titles that are not going to be too challenging, but are still fun things for people to get. Let's see. Come on. There we go. It's brought to you by or sponsored by, go on, Melissa. Left side's yours.
Um, the Bouvier appreciation page, which if you're in this, you probably are on. I started it over a decade ago because I have a personal love of Bouviers, and it's kind of grown into its own little beast. But I'm happy to promote doing more with your Bouvier through the page.
And also co-sponsored by NAWBA, which stands for the North American Working Bouvier Association. We are the affiliate club, we're your breed affiliate club for AWDF or American Working Dog Federation. So we are the ones that give you your scorebooks. We're the ones that, if we ever get enough participation, send teams to Bouvier Worlds, things like that. And we are trying to get more members excited about coming out and doing stuff with their Bouviers. We want to thank you guys for taking some time to sit here and listen to us. Hopefully it won't be too dry. We'll try to keep it fun. And let's introduce you guys to your presenters today. Melissa?
So I am very privileged to have never lived without a Bouvier. I've had them my entire life. My parents were one of those who got the dog a Bouvier after the Sports Illustrated article that is kind of mythical in the Bouvier world. And I've had them ever since. I have a background in veterinary medicine. I'm a veterinary technician, worked in clinics all over the world, worked with military working dogs when I was living overseas, and just have always had a love of dog behavior. And so over the years, I've kind of collected different certifications. And I primarily, as far as clients go, work with dogs that are doing allergy or medical scent detection for service dog tasks. So, and my dogs personally, I've done a lot of different stuff with them, carting, mushing, we agility, dock diving, karting, um, obedience, rally, kind of a big wide spectrum of stuff.
And
So
hi everybody, I'm Danika. I'm your friendly neighborhood NAWBA secretary. I am not a professional trainer. I do not take money to help people train their dogs. In fact, I pay people in order to let me train with them. Um,
I do
and
that
like I
too, by
said,
the way.
yeah, I'm the secretary of NAWBA, and I am not the necessarily the jack of all trades. I've done a lot of stuff. I've done scent work, I've done AKC tracking, I've done AKC obedience. I've never done agility, and I never plan to. I'm in North Texas where we have a lot of world team members, and like people here are batshit crazy when it comes to agility. So it's a weird vibe. Um, but my dogs tend not to have huge amounts of titles. They will have very high level titles. So my dog that right there in the picture, that's Goku. Goku is the only level 2 Mondioring and Frittering Bouvier in the entire Western Hemisphere. And my female R2 is the only IGP titled bitch still living in the United States. So I am primarily a protection sport trainer. We are going to be going through, we did our introductions. We're going to be talking about why we're here. We're going to be going over the different titles and certificates that you guys can start looking at for your Bouviers at an entry level. And then we're going to dive deep into the AKC CGC. We're going to talk about each exercise and how to train it. And then we're going to spend some time on trick dogs, on the trick dog titles, which are heavily tied to the CGCs. And then we're going to have some time for Q&A. Why we are here. Bouviers, as you guys should know, I assume everybody knows, are working dogs. right? Yeah, they could be lazy couch potatoes, but at their hearts, they want to have jobs to do. And they're much happier when they have something to do. Um, we want to help you guys get out there and compete in title with your dogs because it's fun. And because trust me, your dogs don't care about the letters, but they care about the time that you spend training and the time you spend out there trialing with them. Even if sometimes you have to grit your teeth the entire time you're out there and your smile looks like you're trying not to scream, I promise you, they actually think it's fun. Training and working with your Bouvier in any capacity helps build their confidence and it helps build your relationship with them. And then the more you show and the more you trial and the more you show up, it's going to let more people know that Bouviers are not just fuzzy couch potatoes. So we need to get out there and represent for our breed. Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bouviers, like you said, I mean, people do often think of them as either stubborn, hard to train, and they definitely are different to train than labs or shepherds or mals, but I wouldn't necessarily call them stubborn. They just have their own ideas of what's best to do. And I think that there's just a lot of fun in getting into dog sports, but it is very intimidating to get into dog sports. So that's one of the reasons I was very supportive of this idea and I'm happy to do it is how do you get from I have worked with my dog at home to showing up at a trial on the weekend? How do you register for trials? How do you know what to train for? Um, and so hopefully by doing this, we'll be able to bridge that gap for people and make it a little bit more accessible to do these titles with their dogs. Because I think there's people out there that want to do this stuff and just don't know how to get into it. So,
All right. So we're going to cover a couple of the different entry level titles that are available to Bouviers. On the AKC side, we have got what's known as the AKC Family titles. So that's going to be your star puppies. So puppies have to be, I believe it's under 6 months old. In
mhm.
order to get their star puppies, they have to go to a class, show up for 6 weeks out of that class, and then I just administered one of these last week. You'd think I would remember. They have to be there for 6 weeks. They have to show you can take things away from them, you can hug them, no aggression, things like that. Basically, that they know how to puppy and they're not going to bite somebody. And then there's the CGC, which is the first level. We'll talk primarily about that one, but we're also going to hit a little on the CGCA and CGCU. There's also the farm dog certification, and then multiple levels of trick dog. And then there is another entry level title that if you guys don't want to spend a lot of time training obedience, which is known as the fit dog, which is basically getting awards for walking your dog. Depending on the level, it can be something as I think it's as easy as like 3 miles a week. And then when you get up to the higher level titles, it's like 20 miles a week.
Yeah.
Under FCI through AWDF, you can also do what's known as the BHVT, which is known as the traffic readiness test. It is similar to the CGC, but it does have harder obedience. You have to do less things, but the things you have to do are scored a little bit differently and they're a little bit harder. So you do have to be able to attention heal. You do have to be able to do a very long down under distraction, things like that. And they have to be able to handle like a biker coming up behind them, things like that. But nobody has to touch your dog in the BH if the judge doesn't want them to, which is nice for some of us. Some of us who have the more working strains, it's nice when nobody has to touch your dog.
In
Um,
Germany, they have to micro scan them for their microchips. So when we were there, that was one of the things. They don't have to touch them, but they do have to approach them with a wand and swipe it
so
over their back.
So, funny thing, everywhere except DDG, the handler is allowed to have their own microchip reader and microchip their own dog, which is
Ah,
why anytime you see me going there, I have a microchip reader in my car that I take it if I think they're going to ask me to microchip. They never do because I'm the only Bouvier who ever shows up.
yeah,
So
so
they're
they
like,
know you.
yeah, I know who you are. Like, yeah, clearly you're not trying to switch out your Malinois. Um, so they never really care, but you are allowed to actually microchip them yourself.
Oh. My club in
Um,
Germany never let me try that.
and then there's what's known as the Mondio Ring sociability test. So this is very, very similar to the CGC, again, with no touchies. But it is things like healing around distractions, doing a down, doing a short separation, doing a recall. Um, both of those titles, you do have to have what's known as a score book in order to take them, but score books are very inexpensive, and I'm the one who dispenses them. So if you need one, just let me know. There's also through SOC, which is the French Kennel Club, available in the United States, is known as the CSAU. Please do not ask me to try and say what that stands for. But it is very similar to the Mondio Ring sociability test. It's the first level test for French Ring, but basically it is a bunch of healing, a recall, a gunshot, things like that. Under that same kennel club that we do not have in the United States, though in NAWBA we've talked about maybe with nationals bringing over a French judge if we can get enough people who want to do it, the tan and the cat, which are tests of aptitude and temperament. So the dogs do have to be able to take a bite for them. So they do have to be able to defend. They have to be able to bark. They have to be able to have a gunshot recover, and then they do have touchies in them. So there is an attack on the handler. There's a gunshot, and then the judge has to be able to touch your dog after all of that. Um, we haven't had one in the United States, I think, since 1998 or something like that. It's been a long time. But we talked about trying to bring them over, trying to bring a judge over if we anybody wants to do that. And then finally, there's the spot on test through UKC. I haven't done this one in a long time, so I honestly don't remember what was in there. I just remember you're allowed to wear a prong collar during
Mm.
it. That one is available through UKC. If I remember correctly, it has a lot more pieces than the CGC does, but it is scored about the same as the CGC. It's more pass fail.
Yeah. Um, we just had one question, Diane, about the temperament test for through
Mhm.
AKC. Um, the temperament testing does not actually fall under AKC family, but it is, I would consider it like an entry level title, but it is not grouped with the CGC stuff. So that's, I assume, why we didn't put it on here. You have to have a separate judging qualification to do the temperament tests. And that's much more on what the dog is naturally capable of. Some people do train for temperament tests, but in an ideal world, you're just checking to see what the dog's natural temperament is. So
So
I hope that
there are a
answered your
ton,
question.
yeah, there are a ton of other kind of like entry level titles,
Yeah,
the ATTBS, whatever it is, temperament test. I only put the ones that are through kennel clubs,
yeah, yeah,
through large kennel clubs on here. Because like Scout Dog has their own and um, CKC has their own, like those kind. I just put the like kind of the major players that are
yeah.
you would be able to run into. All right, Melissa, you're up. Walk us through the different types of CGCs.
Okay, so we're going to go into more detail on the CGC, but just quickly to read over it, your dog needs to be able to accept a friendly stranger, and that just means not reacting in a positive or negative way, kind of a neutral response, not too excited, not shying away. Sitting politely for petting, your dog is going to be lightly tapped on, or not tapped, but lightly pet on the top of the head and the back. Um, I have never had this. I don't know if you have, but appearance and grooming, I've never had a dog show up to a CGC not well groomed, but I suppose it could happen. The out for the walk is not a heel, but the dog shouldn't be pulling. Um, but you certainly can use a heel to go for that. Walking through a crowd, again, not a heel as long as the dog isn't pulling, but with Bouviers, I certainly would put them into a heel. Being able to sit and down and stay until released, coming when called. Reaction to another dog. Is your dog going to have an overly excited reaction? Are they going to be aggressive towards another dog? That's what you're testing there. Distraction, again, shouldn't be a big deal for a well-bred Bouvier, but if you drop a clipboard, what does the dog do? They're allowed to startle, but they should immediately kind of be like, oh, no big deal. And then the supervised separation, that's the tough one for the Bouviers who don't want to be separated from their people. I see it more as a out of sight downstay. Um, the other levels are increasing levels of difficulty for the most part. I always feel really weird asking on the CGCU, which is the highest level, if their dog is house trained, which is one of the 10 requirements for that level. And I have no idea why that's not on the CGC and why it is on the CGCU. Because, you know, you have these old adult dogs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope your Mastiff is house trained. Otherwise, I don't know how you live at home. But anyways, they all just increase in difficulty. So the CGCA is a little bit more difficult. You have to meet with a person and actually have a casual conversation. You are walking past distractions. You're going to stay with multiple animals around you. The dog, instead of like accepting a friendly stranger that is calm and normal, maybe the person comes over and they're holding a backpack or they're holding a big bag, which some dogs are more wary of. This one, they're going to ask for the dog to walk past food on the floor. So they have to have a leave it, a down or a sit stay. So this is a longer stay than in the CGC where you're just kind of it's quick and then a recall. Recall with a distraction is calling the dog past a toy. So they don't veer off and go towards the toy. They should come straight towards you. And then walking through a door is having door manners. It's just being able to not pull through the door, being able to wait so that you can open it and then allow the dog to go through. The CGCU originally came out kind of as a public access test, and then the service dog world got real upset that AKC said that. And so they kind of switched gears and made it more. I mean, it still has the same items on it, but they don't promote it that way anymore. But it is, how can the dog work in an urban environment? So can they be on a busy street? Are they going to be able to hear traffic noises? Can they stop at a stop sign and then cross the street under control? If people come up to the dog and pet it and they have that bag and they're moving around the bag, is it going to cause a different reaction? And then you also have stairs, steps, or elevators. So the dog has to be able to traverse between levels of a building safely. And then the silly one of the house trained. Can this dog not go to the bathroom in the home? And then this is the tricky one that a lot of people don't like providing the CGCU as a tester, because car manners means that you have to have a car available to test the dog and see if they're going to have a reaction to being loaded into a car or the car moving, and how they can safely travel in the car. So that's a pretty brief overview. If anybody has any questions about the specific parts or anything of the higher levels, just drop it into the chat and we'll answer them at the end. We'll also ask for questions at the end, but we're going to go into more detail about the CGC itself. So just the CGCA and the CGCU, if you want any more information, go ahead and ask.
And to be clear, in order to do the CGCA or U, you have to have the CGC, but you do not have to have an A to try the U.
Yes, and a lot of people do the CGCA and CGCU at the same time. If you have a evaluator who's willing to do that, I've done that. They're very similar. You can kind of do them depending on your setup at the same time. But yes, you can do that either way. But yeah, you have to have the CGC first.
All right, so let's start with, what does the CGC exercises look like? Assuming I was friendly dog, or I was friendly stranger, right?
Yeah.
The first exercise, friendly stranger, is designed to assess whether or not the dog will allow a non-threatening stranger to approach. So the evaluator approaches the dog and the handler. They have a short conversation. They do a mock handshake. And the evaluator's job is to ignore the dog. So they're not asking to pet the dog. They're not interacting with the dog. It's just whether or not the dog can sit quietly. So this is what it looks like. It's this fast. That quick. Um, by the way, I do want to say that Melissa and I spent some time videoing the different exercises and how to train them. To be clear, most of the dogs in here are, so it's mostly Freya and R2, and then
Yeah.
Goku shows one part of it. We are talking about 4 and 5-year-old highly titled dogs. The dogs do not have to look as pristine and as precise as what we're showing in order to be able to pass. I tried to talk my sister into letting her year-old Australian Shepherd do it for me, and we tried like one exercise, and she was like, "No, absolutely not." Bouvier people want to see Bouviers.
Well,
So,
and that's why I have a poodle and I was like, but they don't nobody wants to see the poodle and then the Bouvier. He is in one of the videos as a distraction dog and he is not pristine. So
so how do we train this? I like to teach the dog to sit in heel position first, right? So I don't worry about this until I know my dog can sit in heel position and give me attention for a little while. At first, I'm going to use things like a lure to get them to maintain focus on me. Then I'm going to fade the lure. Um, an expert tip when you're training this and when you're trialing this is to watch your dog. You are allowed to smile at your dog. You're allowed to talk to your dog. You're allowed to babble at your dog. You're allowed to do everything during this exercise other than hold your dog's mouth shut or pin them down. So you can do all of these other things to keep your dog's attention for that 3 seconds that the evaluator walks up on you. So, like I said, we could do things like I'm going to lure her. So I'm not even going to give her an option to look at my sister. Um, and then showing that was more of a fading the lure. So that was more secondary reward. She's already looks at me. I give her a second before she gets her reward. We can do this with both food and we can do it with toys. So that was an example of food. If your dog is more toy motivated, sometimes it's easier to do it with food or with a toy. And this is an example of what it looks like when you're using a toy. Does that make sense to everybody? That's one that should be super easy for most dogs to be able to do. Sitting politely for petting. I think this one was yours, Melissa, right?
it was, yeah. So this one can be challenging for some Bouviers who feel no need for strangers to touch them. That's not true of all Bouviers, but particularly working lines are like, I'm fine with you being there, but I don't need you to touch me. Freya falls into that category. She has no need for people that are not me, essentially. So this one is something that can be challenging for a Bouvier, but it is designed to assess if the dog will allow a friendly stranger to pet it. So the evaluator is going to be very neutral in this. There should not be bending over the dog or anything like that. They're just going to come up to you, say, can I pet your dog? The evaluator will pet the head and back of the dog. The exercise begins with the dog in heel position, but can stand when being pet. They don't need to maintain any particular position while the evaluator is evaluating them. But the dog shouldn't show overt shyness or aggression. That's what they're looking for.
Whoops. There we go. You want to go through the training and then we'll play the video?
Yeah. So, like I said, Freya is not a dog that loves to be pet by strangers. So, when I taught this to her, I taught it as a stay, essentially, or a stand stay in obedience, where somebody's going to come up and she knows that they're exactly what they're going to do, and she just completely ignores them. So, I'm going to use a lure for that. I'm going to be feeding her food when my daughter comes by and pats her. That way she's associating the stand stay and getting fed with the interaction from the stranger. But you do need to have a sit or a down and heel to start this, like Danika said. Um, so as soon as my daughter comes towards me, I'm going to start providing that food, and eventually fade it when the pattern becomes reinforced. Um, Expert tip here, if you teach a solid sit with a solid release to say hi. So this would depend on the dog. If your dog is friendly with people, then I would definitely teach it this way, where you have a sit stay and then you release them to go say hi to the evaluator, and then they can do whatever they want. With a dog like Freya, I'm going to keep her in that position and let the evaluator do what they need to do, but she's not going to pay attention to them. So that's what you'll see in the video.
All right, hang on. Let me see. How do I get a YouTube video to play? There we go.
So you can see if your dog has a better sit than a stand, then they can be in a sit position, and maintain that the same way.
So I'm the same way. I have a dog, Goku, who does not care for 99.9% of the population. Basically, unless you're me or my sister, he wants, or wearing a suit, he wants nothing to do with you. So when he did, because he did get his CGC, um, I had taught him what's called an exam command because he needed it to get his French ring. Because the CSAU, I did not point out, they have, if they are a intact male, they have to make sure they have two testicles. So the judge does have to grab their balls. So I taught him an exam command, which meant you put your chin in my hand, and then because he's got a big old thick beard, I kind of like move my fingers up there, pin his mouth shut while people are coming up to pet him. But another expert tip for this is if your dog is a little bit shy and doesn't like other people touching them, be strategic about the person that you pick to do the evaluation. Um,
Definitely.
Find a non-threatening looking woman to do it rather than a big tall guy or something like that. Pick
Or,
somebody
you know,
that
if
is, go
go
on.
ahead, sorry.
No, no, I'm done. Go on.
Um, you know, in an ideal world, a Bouvier person who knows that they aren't gonna love and want the attention. If you get somebody who's expecting your Bouvier to act like a lab, you're probably gonna fail. Because they're gonna be like, they don't, oh look, they're shying away from me. I'm like, they're not shying away from you. They don't want you to touch them. There's a difference between being shy and being like, ew, gross. I don't want to hug. So, you know, definitely be specific about that. And then another tip that I've learned with Freya specifically is it's not necessarily an exam cue, but I've taught her to target the top of her head to people's hands. So it's kind of like a hand touch, except she is putting her head there. And so for her, it's a behavior. She doesn't want to be pet, but for the people who come up and want to touch her, she's like, I will do this because it's a behavior that I know I'm supposed to do. Versus I actually enjoy being petted. But I take her out a lot in public. And if people are going to randomly touch her head, she would rather it be like, oh, this is a trick I'm doing. This is a behavior I'm doing. I know what the rules are here. And the rule is I'm going to go towards that hand and target it with my head. So that really helped her.
That's a good one. I've never tried that. Let's see. Appearance and grooming. This one must be me. Okay. So the next exercise after this is appearance and grooming. So this is designed to assess whether or not your dog will allow examination and handling by people like groomers and vets. Um, the evaluator is going to approach the dog. They're going to lightly run a brush over the top of their back. The evaluator can't, if you do not supply your own brush and hand it to the evaluator will walk over with their own in their hand. If your dog is a little bit weird about that, bring your own brush. Um, they will also examine the eyes, general appearance. They also have to be able to, we have to be able to pick up their feet. And then the dog is allowed to change positions during the exercise. The handler can talk to the dog, and the dog is not supposed to show overt shyness or aggression. So this is R2 doing it. You will notice there is a handler change. My sister is the one holding her, and I'm doing the exam. And that's because my sister hates R2 and doesn't want to pet her because R2 will jump on her and be an idiot about it. And it's that short. Most evaluators, I don't know about you, Melissa, I always run the backside of the brush along them
Same.
because I never want to accidentally, especially if it's a coated breed, I never want to accidentally catch a knot and make the dog
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Well, and
So I
for like
always run the
really,
backside.
really short-haired breeds that don't get brushed, I'm not going to brush them suddenly and have them be like, "Oh, what the heck was that feeling?" So it's really more of a almost a microchip like wand, I'm touching the back of the dog, but yeah, I'm not going to take a brush that I would use on a Bouvier and put it down a Doberman's back and expect them to be like, "Oh, that's normal." But yeah, and again, I think this is one I had somebody fail Freya on this exam because she like wanted to get really deep and personal with her foot. And Freya was fine giving her her foot, fine. But then when she gripped it and was like, really, I don't know what she was looking for, Freya was like, yeah, no, I'm out. And so since she pulled her paws away and left, that particular evaluator failed her on that exercise. And it's up to the evaluator. There is some discretion in the situation, but it was a good lesson in knowing what your evaluator is going to do before you uh,
Yeah,
try it.
I would not have failed a dog for that, but I don't manipulate their toes. All I
Right,
do is
right.
see if they will let me touch their feet. I'm not actually clipping their nails.
Yeah.
So I don't
And
need to get in there
and
and
I think
good, but a
that's what
good,
she was kind of like simulating is that she was like extending her nail, holding her paw tightly. And Freya would be fine with me doing that relatively, but not a stranger.
and again, find an evaluator. You can ask them questions before when you send them an email. If you're not doing it at like an event,
Yeah.
um, ask for somebody who does working dogs, who does working dog evaluations, because um, I almost consistently do. So I do them a lot for the SAR teams, for the search and rescue teams around here. Um, and there's a lot of twitchy Malinois. So, I don't want to get bit, but I also want to be fair. So I'm like,
Right.
done. I spend as little time as possible with my hands on other people's dogs. So just, those are some questions you can ask the evaluator. Like, I have a working dog. Are you comfortable with working dogs?
Yes.
Because you don't want them showing fear or intimidation to your dog when they walk up, unless your dog is super comfortable with that. Mine would see that and start salivating and be like, "You're mine, bitch."
Yeah. Game on.
Yeah. When you start training the appearance, like I said in the first one, this one can be a little tough for some dogs. Um, First thing is to determine if your dog is more comfortable with you close by or further away. So R2 is much more comfortable if I'm close to her. Goku, on the other hand, when we're standing close to each other like that, it is 6 foot bubble around mommy. Nobody comes near mommy. If I am not with him, he'll let you do whatever you want to him. When he is near me, he's like, oh no, we're a team and nobody comes near us. So first thing is determine if your dog is more comfortable with you standing right beside them or if they're more comfortable with you further away. Once you know that, then allow them to get comfortable with people approaching with things in their hands. So if you do not bring your own brush, the evaluator is going to walk up with a brush in their hand. Sometimes That can weird dogs out because the only time they see it is when they're at the vet or when they're at the groomer, which are usually not pleasant experiences. So get them comfortable with that. Have your husband or your friend or your training partner or whatever walk up with things in their hands. Um, I like to, when I teach this, I start brushing by both of us holding the brush. So I use my sister for this a lot. She just loves it because she just loves Bouviers. But like I will brush and then I will keep my hand on their back while she's brushing. So they kind of get used to more than one person manipulating them at the same time. Um, this one I also will teach them to maintain eye contact with me because I don't want them staring down the evaluator because Ruffian, my war Bouviator, she won't do that. Goku, my one from my Mandingo from Carla, he will stare people down. Um, and then expert tip is teach the paw shake. So rather than making the evaluator bend over your dog and run their hand down and do the horse trick of getting them to flip their foot up, teach your dog to offer a paw. It's less stressful for the evaluator because our face is not right by your dog's face while we're doing this, for one. And two, it is less stressful on the dog because I'm not putting a bunch of spatial pressure on the dog while I'm doing it. So training this is an example of how I start training this. My sister wasn't here for this, so this is just kind of how I would start it. Luring her, holding her, using the lure to keep her head in one spot while I'm examining her ears, while I'm petting her head. I'm then gonna offer her paw. She lays down because I cut her nails while she's laying down. But then I'm gonna manipulate paws, immediately reward. Manipulate paws, reward. Just getting her desensitized to people handling her feet. And then next step, which I wasn't able to do, is then have my sister come in and do the same thing while I'm standing there rewarding her. All right, so then during the test, if I needed to, I could have air cookies, like I just did right there. Nothing in my hand, but she thinks there's something in my hand. So she's going to put her muzzle in my hand, which gives me control of her head. Loose leash walking. This is my one that this is like the bane of my existence. When I teach classes, everybody sees my dogs come out and they see these beautiful heels and they're like, "You're such a good trainer." And I'm like, "Wait till you see my dog just try and walk on a leash when they're not under command." Because I
I
live on
always think that's
acreage.
the funniest thing when people walk out of the rally ring or the obedience ring and their dogs are just like hauling them back to their crates.
Exactly. I mean, I live on property, so my dogs don't wear leashes
Yeah.
unless they're leaving the house. So, like, I'm really bad at teaching loose leash walking. But the loose leash walk is designed to assess if the dog is under the handler's control. It does not have to be an attention heel. The evaluator is going to ask the pair to walk in a pattern that consists of one right turn, one left turn, and one about turn. So, an about turn is basically just a 180-degree turn. You may pick the direction that you want to turn. Most people turn right because it's easier. You can be fancy and turn left, though, if you want to. Um, the handler chooses the speed to walk. So we're not going to tell you you have to walk faster or slower or anything. You choose a speed that's most comfortable for your dog. Generally speaking, walking faster is better when you're doing something like this. One, to get it over with, and two, the faster you're walking, the more likely your dog is to stay connected to you. The dog can be on either side of you, but they do not have to maintain eye contact. So this is not a heel. They can walk on the right side if they want, and the handler may talk to the dog the entire time. So this is an example of what the loose leash walk looks like. So you see she's actually more attention healing than actually just like loose leash walking because she doesn't know how to loose leash walk and she only knows how to attention heal. But it's that easy, right? It's a right turn, a left turn. There will be the distraction of the evaluator. As an evaluator, I never have the dog walk past me or up to me. I always make them do it further away from me and I watch from a distance to try and be fair to them because this is not a BH, right? I don't have to show that I can maintain direct control of them when they're walking up to me. To train this, I do some things like play games with them, like the choose to heal game, which is I train all my on leash stuff off leash, which is basically where you get the dog to disengage from you while you're walking, and that such as tossing treats or something like that. And then you're going to mark and reward them when they get back into the correct position that you want them to be in. You're going to see me do this with Goku on here. Um, you do it when they're within the distance that would be the loose leash. You can also, if you want, use a negative reward to teach them that pulling increases the desired distance to an object. So this is called the tree game. So this is if my dog wants to get to point A and they start pulling to point A, I'm going to plant my feet at point B and we are not going to move until they stop pulling. And if they continue to pull, I'm actually going to move backwards from point A. So every time they pull, I'm going to move back or I'm going to stand still. So they basically learn if I want to get to where I want to get to, I have to not pull. They learn incredibly quickly when you do this. Believe it or not, if you watch all like the fancy bite work videos of the guys trying to get the dogs to break the line and bite, that is 100% how we teach it. Is you want to get that guy, if you don't down, I'm going to move you further back. They pick it up very, very quickly. The issue is if you have to take your dog somewhere, like to the vet or on a walk, you can't do that the entire time, so you can't always be 100% consistent with it. Some expert tips to being able to pass this is talk to your dog, right? Chatter, baby talk, kissy face at them, whatever that keeps their attention on you instead of what's going on around them. I like to walk fast. I will walk fast while I'm doing this because the faster I walk, the more likely they are to pay attention to me. And then having a different command for a loose leash walk versus an attention heel. If you're planning on doing any type of competition, beyond this, like any type of obedience or rally, and you have to do a competition style heel or an attention heel, always have a different word for we're just walking versus I want you to pay attention. So this is an example. This is a little bit longer video. So this is baby Goku. He wasn't even a year old here. So this is showing what it looks like to use luring to get them to pay attention, to get them to stick with you. So as soon as he gets back into the right position, I'm going to lure him a little bit, make sure he stays with me, click, give him his treat. Click, give him his treat because he's staying in the right spot. I'm then going to use some movement to keep him interested and entertained of staying with me. And then I'm going to repeat and do the whole thing again. Dogs find movement incredibly satisfying. So when in doubt, move. Not when you're being a tree. Don't move when you're being a tree. But when
Not
you're
when you're
actually,
planted.
yeah, when you are training things, make sure to give them movement. This is an example of what's called the choose to heal game, which is basically I'm going to keep walking when he disengages. As soon as he gets back into the right position, I'm going to give him his reward. And then I'm just going to keep walking. He needs to figure out how to get back. He gets back. He gets his reward. He's about 3 years old here. So he knows this game pretty well. Plus, this is his training room, so he knows he has to listen in there. But I'm not using any type of correction. All I'm doing is using some markers and some timing and some rewards to tell him, hey, you're in the right spot. The other thing, using movement to keep them entertained and interested. Why I like to walk fast is because you'll notice the faster I move and the more jerky I am, the more he pays attention to me. So this is called the find the leg game. And then I'll walk and then I'll quickly do things like back up, cut to the side, make him work to stay into heel position. Get back where you're supposed to be Goku. So it's just his job to stay in the right position. And it's a game to him. I'll do things like I'll push him, I'll move real fast and kick at him. and it's his job to get back into the right position. As soon as he does, I give him what he wants, which is movement and reward. Does that make sense to everybody? Those are just some ways to teach them how to stay with you other than just rote click reward, click reward, click reward.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they try to teach loose leash walking is walking straight. Because your dog is going to get bored. They're going to find their own things to look at. If you are, Diane, you've got a puppy at home. With my puppies, that's what I do. I actually start teaching them loose leash walking by backing up because puppies naturally follow. And so I'll back up and the puppy's moving towards me. I'm going to reward him for coming towards me. And then once he's doing that a couple steps, then I'll just turn around and then we're walking straight. And then I'm going to immediately turn to the right and he's going to follow and I'm going to reward that. Which is very much similar to a choose to heal, but you're teaching them that you are kind of, I always joke and tell people that like the dogs might think we're kind of crazy because we like never walk in straight lines. So they've got to keep an eye on us. And herding breeds love keeping an eye on people that move. So if you are something that might dart away, they're going to pay attention to you because that's what they're genetically bred to do.
Very true. All right. This one's yours. Walking through crowds.
This one, I it is a more difficult and because you don't want the dog. So if you have a friendly dog and you're walking through crowds, then they might pull over and want to talk to everybody who comes by. So a dog that will follow you when you don't have anybody around is going to need extra help and reinforcement of keeping their focus on you with the distraction of a person around. So you're going to reward, you don't want, and the opposite of that is if the dog is shy and a person is there and they are leaning away from the person in the crowd. So for this one, if your dog has it, a focused heel is a great way to walk through this exercise. If they don't, you're really going to focus on praising attention to you when you're making turns, when you're talking, when you're trying to get past that distraction of the person. So I think I enlisted my entire family to come for this one. It is very similar to the previous exercise. It's just an increased level of difficulty because you have a person there as a distraction. At this level, people should not be like actively trying to engage with the dog and pull them away from you. They're basically just cones of people. But when you're doing this, you're going to reward for focusing on you. You're going to reward for anytime you are close to the distraction. And I don't know if you can hear Freya moaning in the background. I apologize if you can. You're going to use that lure just like you did originally to get them into position. When you're right next to the distraction or right before the distraction, that's when you're going to bring that in so that you're rewarding the focus next to the distraction, which in this case is the person. Talking to the dog, walking swiftly, again, all keeps them paying attention to you and basically ignoring the other distractions. During the test, when you cannot have treats on you, air cookies are definitely a thing. And I swear, especially with that Bouvier beard, you toss a treat towards them. They don't know if it's in their mouth or if it's in their beard. So if it's an air treat, it's all good. In case people don't know what we're talking about, it is literally just pretending to throw a treat at a dog without having a treat in your hand or putting it in their mouth.
Air cookies are awesome. There we go.
She thought I dropped a treat there. That's why she looked down. And this is more than what is required for the CGC. Like Danica said, Freya's past this level of entry level, but um, I am a person who generally feels like you should always train for the exercise to be harder than it is when you're actually trialing. Because then the dogs, when they have all that extra pressure and when you are stressed because, you've spent 6 months training for something and now you're going to have 2 minutes to do it, um, it makes it a little bit easier when the exercise is easier than what they are used to doing in a training scenario.
One thing about this exercise I forgot to put on here is make sure that you change up the directions that you're turning the dog and the placement of the people. So this isn't like obedience, where the people are always standing in a very specific place in the ring and they're at a specific distance. I have the people walking
Yeah.
and just kind of shambling around. So it's not like you can say, teach the dog, I'm always going to go in and I'm going to go to the back and I'm going to left circle around the back person and I'm going to right circle around this person, like you can in obedience or IGP. So just make sure that when you're practicing this, you kind of change it up and show them different pictures.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Whoops, now that decides to work. So sitting down on cue and stay in place. So this is probably the what I would consider to be the pure obedience part of the CGC. So this is designed to demonstrate that you have basic obedience on your dog. The dog must demonstrate both a sit and a down on cue. The dog must comply without resentment and without compulsion. The handler is allowed to give multiple cues, though. I personally, as an evaluator, I let them have three cues before I'm like, okay, the
Yeah.
dog's not going to do it. I let them have three. The handler gets to decide when you guys are doing the stay, you get to decide which position you want to leave your dog in for the recall. You walk up, there's going to be a leash that's 20 feet long. You are going to attach to your dog. You can remove your leash or you can leave it on. I usually remove mine, but you can leave it on if you want to. So you put that leash on. You are then going to tell your dog to sit or down and then to stay. You're going to walk 20 feet away. You're going to turn. The evaluator is then going to signal you to return to the dog. Now, I've never seen an evaluator make you wait more than 3 seconds to return to your dog. So this is not like you have to sit out there for a minute and a half and wait. I usually am walk out there, turn around, take one breath, go back to the dog. The dog may change positions, but they cannot move forward. So if you left them in a down, they can sit. If you left them in a sit, they can stand. You just don't want them moving forward towards you when you're returning. The handler is supposed to wait until the evaluator gives them a signal to release the dog once they return to them. A lot of evaluators forget that they're supposed to tell you that you can release your dog. So if they're just sitting there and have you kind of like hanging and waiting, you can ask them if you can release your dog. When I did this with R2, the evaluator forgot to tell me. So I was there for like 30 seconds. I'm like, can I let her go now? And she's like, oh, it's all. So it looks like this. And again, your dogs don't have to be as precise as this. They just have to do the exercise.
Or is enthusiastic.
Oh, a little misenthusiasm. Dog exhausts me sometimes. My big piece of advice is don't ever go to a Dutch breeder and say, I want the driviest female you have.
You will get what you ask for.
Exactly. That wasn't quite 20 feet because I was doing it in my training room, but that's all it is. Walk away and then you tell them, okay, you're good. So how do we train this? All right. There are as many ways to train this as there are trainers in the world. Um, My friend Dave Courier, one of my favorite quotes of his is if you ask 10 trainers how to train something, you're going to get eight different answers and seven of them are going to work. Um, there are lots of different ways to train this. You can lure this behavior, you can shape this behavior, you can capture this behavior, you can use props to get this behavior. But basically, teaching a stay is all about consistency. Be careful when you are teaching these. Do not increase distance and duration at the same time. If you're going to have longer duration, stay closer. If you're going to have more distance, return faster. Many people will also do a stay versus a wait command. Stay is I am returning to you. Wait is I'm going to recall you. I know a lot of people who do that. I don't because that's just if I say sit, then your happy ass better stay sitting until I tell you to do something else. Um, but a lot of people like the clarity of a stay versus a wait command. Some expert tips for this is usually down is the most stable position and the easiest one to teach a stay in. There is more movement that has to happen in order for a dog to get up and try and come to you from a down than there is from a sit. Even though in the video you're going to see me do a sit with R2. But that is literally just because she is an IGP dog and sit stay is the only one I ever you return to the dog in. So down stay and stand stays are recalls. So that is the only reason she's in a sit. Um, Make sure your dog is comfortable when training stays, right? Bouviers are notoriously dislike sunlight. So do not ask your dog, do not spend a lot of time training stays when it's 105 degrees out in direct sunlight. Your dog is going to get up and try and go in the shade. Ask me how I know that. Um, Also make sure, right, when you first start training it, comfy flooring, do it on their beds, do it on the couch, do it someplace where they are going to enjoy staying so that you can be successful with them. Third one is do not give, if you're going to give a hand signal, I'm bad. I don't know bad, but I don't use hand signals when I teach stays. But a lot of people who are more AKC focused use hand signals. So they'll put their hand in front of the dog's face and say stay. If you are going to do that mechanism, do not have a treat in your hand that you're doing that with because your dog is going to think you're luring them and they're going to follow the treat and then you're going to have to reset the entire thing. Finally, reward the dog in the stay to add value to the stay versus the release. What I mean by that is every time when the dog is staying, tell them things like good or click or something and reward them while they're in that they've maintained that stay position versus is when you release them. Otherwise, they're going to start anticipating the release as opposed to anticipating the stay. So this is a little video of R2 working on this. I'm using a prop here, which is a touch pan. My stays I train I use touch pans a lot just because of the way I train. I love using touch pans or something like a Kato board to teach the stay. But here, all it is you are sitting, you keep your front paws there, and then when I click, she knows that a click means you stay there until I come back. I'm closer, but I increased a little bit of duration as opposed to distance. You can hear Goku in the background of the video being irritated because he hears the click and it's not him. Right now, I'm going to do it without the prop. It's the same picture. I'm going to start her in the same spot she had the prop in. I'm going to do exactly the same thing without the prop. And I'm rewarding her while she is in the sit. If your dog cannot stay in a static position when it hears the click, make sure you walk up to it before you give the click. I'm giving her a little like distraction, telling her just because I take a breath, just because I move to turn around and come back to you doesn't mean you get to break your stay. And then for her, she gets her release of her ball.
I think one of the things that a lot of people make a mistake on with stays is that they steadily increase the time that they're gone, but you really don't want to just always make it harder. So, just like we would use a variable reinforcement, we want a variable amount of difficulty. So sometimes you're going to come back right away. Sometimes it's going to be 30 seconds. Sometimes it's going to be, 40 seconds and then back to 8 seconds. Obviously, always under what you expect your dog to be successful at. So if you think your dog can do it, that's the kind of where you want to go. But don't always increase. Then the dogs are just like, well, this gets more boring and boring and boring all the time. And that I found that to be very helpful. If anybody else doesn't, or people don't recognize the term that Danica used, some people use like feed buckets, some people just use dog bowls, but it's basically just a hard round object, typically that the dogs can put their front paws on. A catto board is one specific to dog training that is really meant for dogs to sit on. There's several other boards like that. Some people just use yoga mats, some people use a towel. But using something that's raised and off the ground is often helpful for the dogs to recognize that there's a barrier. I shouldn't take my feet off and touch the ground. My feet need to stay on here. So it makes it a little bit easier to train.
Yeah, the thing I was using, the touch pan, it is a feed pan from it's a chicken feed pan from Tractor Supply.
Yeah.
So they work really well. Not the largest size, the second to largest size. The largest size collapses too easily when they step on it. All right, I think the next one, oh, recall. Recall is actually, to me, one of the easiest ones to teach because our Bouviers naturally want to be all up in our business all the time. So this is designed to assess if the dog will recall to the handler. This usually is done directly after the stay. So they'll be on that same 20-foot line, only the handler is only going to walk 10 feet away. The handler is then going to recall the dog to them. The dog can come to any position relative to the handler and take any position, right? So it does not have to be that AKC comes straight to the front and sit. It can be a go between the legs and down. It can be come to heel position. It can just come to me and stand, right? It doesn't have to be any type, it's not a formal recall. It is just, will the dog come back to you? Um, the handler is allowed to encourage the dog to come the entire time. You are not allowed, however, to get onto your knees and call the dog back to you, unless you have zero control over your dog. And then you can do that, but you're going to fail that exercise in the test. So it looks like this. You tell the dog, I told her for her, I just did it from a down. Most people would do it from a sit. Somebody is going to be holding the back line in case the dog tries to break. It's that easy. All they have to do is come to you. It's super easy to teach. How do we train this? Recall is the most fun and for me the most important command you're ever going to teach your dog is to recall to you. I like to do this. I like to start when they are puppies with what's called restrained recalls, which we'll see, which is basically somebody holding the dog, holding the puppy and making them fight to get to you. This is going to increase speed and desire because we're using frustration. You're then going to, when the dog or the puppy gets there, you're then going to reward the hell out of them every single time. The only time my dogs don't get a reward for recalling to me is when we're in trial. And even then, praise is a reward. So they just don't get a food or a ball reward from me. Recalls, the reward is always going to be, for me, the highest value thing that I have. So for some of you, that's going to be something like hot dogs or cheese. For my dogs, it's usually a toy. So it's a ball, it's a sleeve, it's something like that. During the training phase, do not recall your dog unless you are 100% sure they're going to come, because you don't want to give them the option to blow you off. Just go get them. I understand it's annoying if they're an acre and a half away from you, but just go get them if they're not going to come and you have no way to make them come. For a lot of dogs, praise is as good as food to them. So always make sure as you are giving food, you are also praising. And I see Roland, we have you on here. I know a lot of guys don't like to be silly and roll around and hug and kiss their dogs, but dogs love that, man. Do it. Do it when you're training. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it when you're in the trial or when you're taking the test, but when nobody else is looking, like,
Be a
do it.
cheerleader. Be a cheerleader. That's what I
Exactly.
always tell the guys. Act like a cheerleader.
Exactly. Act like your wife when your wife is playing with the dog. Um,
She's my
An
baby.
expert, huh?
She's my baby. I'm right there with her
Good.
all the time.
An expert tip for this one is during the test, make sure you smile at your dog. Our dogs, like the test, research has shown dogs can read body cues and can read facial expression better than most men can. So they know what that smile means. They know when you're happy. They know when you talk to them in that high-pitched squeaky voice and you clap and you're all happy. They know what that means, and it means a lot to them. So again, be a cheerleader for your dog. So when we are training this is a little bit longer video, but this is what a restrained recall looks like. And you can see the beginning of the famous R2 spin. So for her, because of the sport she is in, I am waiting for her to get to a specific position, which is in heel position. But all I'm doing is I'm I hand her over to somebody else. She is on a harness. When you do restrained recalls, make sure they are on something that they can pull against. Don't do it on a prong collar or a corrective collar. I'm going to get her jazzed up and I'm going to tell her to come. Person on the back line is going to let go. She's a little bit older here doing it. Same thing. You can see she's pulling harder. She knows the game. She's going to try and get to me even faster. She knows to come back into the right position.
That's awesome.
I'm going to reward her several times. We'll do one more of these. But you see, as soon as I start walking away from her, she's like, oh, I know this. I know this game. She gets confused and goes to the wrong person. The dangers of training with a bunch of people there. Other ways you can train it, if you don't have that, is to train with a long line. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of leash pressure on her to get her to come forward when I tell her here. I'm not correcting her, I'm not jerking her, I'm just using a little bit of pressure to tell her to move. And I'm using her highest value reward here, which is her ball. I did not use her ball with her when she was a puppy because she had horrible targeting and she would bite my hands. So if you don't have somebody to help you, the long line and using the long line to kind of pull them and then to guide them in and then give them the reward is a good way to do it. Anything else to add?
If you don't have like, you know, I do restrain recalls too. Sometimes you can do as little as just holding the dog back. And sometimes that even like you can kind of amp the dog up, whoever's holding the dog back. And that is definitely very effective. Kind of like the choose to heal. Sometimes I will like flee a little bit in those situations. I wouldn't do that if I was training for IGP, but probably. But they like to chase you. So, it's not a bad thing to reward as they're coming towards you and talk to them as they're coming towards you, particularly for longer recalls. Praise before they get to you. Reward when you've got a young puppy. I do like name game rewards all the time, and I will mark and reward before the dog even gets to me because I want to reward them for the action of coming towards me when they hear their name. And that is not a recall necessarily, but it reinforces focus on you. Coming towards you is going to get reinforced. Our dogs already like that anyways. So I find you do it a little bit with a Bouvier, they're going to be like, that's the place to be for sure. But yeah, basically the same thing.
All right, this is you. Reaction to another dog.
So, this can be challenging for some dogs that don't, have any interest with other dogs. My goal is always for my dogs to just be neutral around other dogs. I think that Bouviers often, when they're really young, like to play with other dogs, particularly other Bouviers. When they get to adulthood, they're kind of like, if you're not like a dog that I'm going to be around a lot, I just want my dogs to have a neutral reaction to them. So at a very young age, I teach my dogs to focus on me. If they see another dog, they have no expectation that they're ever going to get to interact with other dogs. And I think that if that's their expectation, they're much less likely to be reactive towards another dog. So how this exercise is actually done in the test is two handlers are going to start 20 feet apart. Handler is on the inside. And what that means is that you're going to have the handlers be next to each other. The dogs are going to be on the outside when you're passing each other. You're going to walk towards each other, stop to do a mock handshake. Thank you, COVID. That rule changed during COVID and it stayed as a mock handshake. You're going to briefly say hello. During this time, and especially, we've talked about this quite a bit, talk to your dog. The person that's doing this, helping you with this part of the test, is not going to be offended if you don't make eye contact with them. You don't have to worry about it. So you can look at your dog, you can talk to your dog, tell them they're doing a good job the whole time. Keep them focused on you. The dog can show interest, but they can't cross in front of you. They can't lunge towards the other dog, trying to interact with the other dog in any type of way. And, this exercise does have a lot of discretion of how it's set up, kind of, and how it's supposed to be a novel dog, but there is still. I would talk to your evaluator if you're concerned about this particular exercise. Definitely reach out to the evaluator beforehand and ask them how they're going to set it up for your test so that you can be prepared. And, in this situation, the dog shouldn't be afraid of the other dog, and it shouldn't show any overt aggression towards the other dog. So if we go to the next slide, this is, like I've already talked about, it's basically about having a neutral response to another dog. You don't want the dog to really care that there's another dog that's walking past them. You want to reward any focus on you, rewarding not responding. Work on teaching a default behavior to look at you. Like I said, that's something I start with puppies. If you take your young dog to a training class, some puppy classes still want puppies to interact with each other. I don't let my puppies interact with other puppies unless it's like really specific and I have a specific need to that. Otherwise, I take those opportunities to get them used to being around other dogs in class settings where they see those other dogs are going to do stuff, but they don't pay attention to them. They don't need to interact with them. I think that for me, having a dog that is neutral around other dogs is far more important than having some puppy playtime when you have a young dog. I think there's a lot more that can go wrong when you let your dog socialize with a bunch of dogs versus having that neutral response. If you see your dog doing any hard-eyed staring, or you see them going into a stack, like stiff-bodied, you want to interrupt that right away. Bouviers, I think some dogs, particularly the dark Bouviers, other dogs are nervous around them. That's been my experience. So if they add in that extra oomph of like, I'm kind of looking at you, I'm going to give you a hard stare, it might cause the other dog to react, which is then going to likely to cause your dog to react back. So expert tip, good time for a focus heel. If they're paying attention to you, they're not paying attention to the other dog. In this situation, you can 100% talk to the dog, praise them, all of that the whole time. So you can see here how the dogs are on the outside and they're not that's why if the dog was going to try and interact, they would have to cross across your body to get to them.
So when I put on there, the evaluator has a lot of discretion on this one. Um, the evaluator, so I'm a pretty lenient evaluator about a lot of things. I usually won't fail a dog unless they show overt aggression. Unless they're growling or they're barking or they're showing a lot of reactivity. But then I have seen other evaluators who, if the dog snakes their head around the front of the handler to look but doesn't move their feet, will fail them.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So there is a lot of discretion on the part of the evaluator on what they're going to pass because the rules are not super clear because it literally
It's
just
true.
says, yeah, it just says no shyness or aggression.
Right.
So this is one of those ones where if you are worried about it, again, find a handler, an evaluator who's used to working dogs, because they're probably going to be a little bit more lenient than
Yeah.
somebody who does it for the Labrador Club
Or the Goldens.
or the Goldens, yes. Whoops. Let's see, distractions. So I apologize. I did not have my video for the distractions did not come out, so I had to use a different one. But reaction to distraction. So this one's designed to assess how the dog reacts to novel sights and sounds. The distractions can take place at any point during the test, and the evaluator does not have to warn you that they're happening. So I a lot of times will do this between exercises. Usually when I'm taking the dog from the heel exercise to the sit down exercise is when I will do the distraction. This is the only part that's like a true temperament test to me, is how they react to this. Because it's going to show whether or not the dog is confident, its reaction, its recovery time. Theoretically, there are supposed to be two distractions. Oftentimes, the evaluators will not they'll have the sound distraction. A lot of evaluators will not remember to do the visual distraction, or they'll say their clipboard is the visual distraction. Examples of distractions are things like drop chairs, slam doors, rolling a chair or a suitcase, loud laughs. I've seen somebody do a frisbee, having somebody throw a frisbee, um, or having two people, like having them throw a frisbee or a ball back and forth. Um, my two I always use if I'm indoors, I drop my clipboard on the ground. And then the other one is I carry a bag and walk by the dog. Um, if I'm outside, then my clipboard has a lot of recoil on the clip on the top of it. I'll take the papers out and pull that back and then snap it just to make a loud noise. Um, what we are looking for is the dog is allowed to investigate, meaning they're allowed to look at it. They're even allowed to move a little bit towards it, but they are not allowed to show overt shyness or aggression or inability to recover. The first two are fairly self-explanatory. When we talk about inability to recover, that means that if the dog startles or gets annoyed or aggressive towards the sound, that they are then able to calm down and continue working, which is why I always test this in the middle of the test versus at the end. Um, the dog, as we're doing this, like I said, it can be at any point during the evaluation. It's not at a specific exercise station necessarily. This is an example of what it can look like. The audio is a little bit hard to hear, but you can hear it's actually a gunshot in the background. Um, on this one, unfortunately, I had to use a different video, but you'll be able to see
You'll be
what we're
very unlikely to have a actual gunshot on a
yes.
CGC.
You'll be unlikely to have. I have used one. I've used a cap gun. Because I was doing it for the Labrador Club. I used a cap gun. Um, and for real, if we were doing this for real, the dog she would be on leash. But what we're looking for as evaluators is how the dog reacts to it. So you'll see my video is stuck. Hold on. You can hear it. She just didn't. You couldn't see. What we're actually looking for is the dog. Ideally, the dog doesn't react to the sound. It wasn't that exciting anyway. But let's
She
talk
didn't
about
react.
how do we, huh?
She didn't react, so yeah.
She didn't care. She did. She cares about very little in life other than ball, food, sleeve.
Then
Um, so how do we train this? Generally speaking, Wilbur Bouviers do not give a rat's ass about the distraction. Like one of the things I love about Bouviers, I used to run shepherds and I've trained a lot of Malinois. One of the things that I love about Bouviers is they're so bomb-proof in public and in environments. They don't care about loud noises. People can move things and touch things and they're just like, whatever, man. They don't care. So this is usually pretty easy for them. Um, but I do teach my dogs from a very young age that when in doubt, ask me what to do. So every time you hear a new noise and you don't know what to do, look at me and ask me what to do. I don't care if you look away and look at the sound, especially as puppies, because that's an instinct. And it's not fair to ask a puppy not to look when they hear a novel sound because looking when you hear a novel sound is what's kept mammals alive. So I'm fine if they look at it, but I want them to refocus on me and ask me what should I do about that. So I teach that from the time they come home. Expert tip is watch your dog, and if they check out with the distraction, you can say their name to get them back. So this is an example of R2, and R2 is a little over a year old. She went and spent a little bit of time with a trainer named Kevin Bain. So he is at Mondio Ring Nationals with her, and you can see all the stuff happening around him and around her, people moving chairs, people walking, and all he's doing is rewarding her when she focuses back on him. He's giving her competing behaviors versus paying attention to any at the other things that are happening. And she starts just not even paying attention to what's going on around her because she'd so much rather have interaction with him. Cinnamon is one of his dogs that's really bad at catching. But does that make sense, right? All he's trying to do, he's not trying to teach her anything specific. He's just showing her and teaching her. When all this craziness around you is happening, just look at me and everything will be fine.
yeah. And I agree with you. A lot of this is genetic. There are, you know, people get very hung up on early socialization with puppies. And I do think that there's certainly things that you can do. I don't think that you can make a dog that's not environmentally sound with the right socialization. Genetics just play a huge role in this. But certainly I do the same thing. I call it weird is cool. With my puppies and in my puppy classes is novel textures, novel sounds, things like that. You just want to praise, be like, oh my God, that was so cool. A siren just went by. Look at me. I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you, hey, it's no big deal. And if you establish that pattern when they're young, they really do tend to just be like, it's no big deal. Or, hey, that was cool. I'm going to look at you. Maybe I'll get a reward for looking at you after that crazy noise or that crazy thing that I just saw.
Exactly. All right. And our last exercise is our supervised separation. This one was yours.
So this one I find is difficult for Bouviers. Uh and hurting breeds in general. And I do think that this is another one where talking to your evaluator beforehand is important. For Freya, I would do this as a downstay, and I would ask the instructor not to interact with the dog, not to talk to them, not to try and pet her. Some evaluators are going to want to do that, and so you need to just kind of know what you're getting into with that. So basically what goes on here is the dog gonna fret? Is the dog gonna get really upset when you're out of sight? The handler is gonna hand the end of the dog's leash to the evaluator or helper, and then they leave. That's, an important note because sometimes you take the dog and then somebody else takes the dog and you stay. That's a whole different exercise to dogs if they're being taken away from you versus you leaving them. So that's an important thing to work on. The handler can tell the dog, like I said, I would do this as a stay. If you have a golden or a lab, you're probably just going to hand the leash over and the dog's going to be like, are you my new owner? I love you. I can't remember who that person was that just left. The second exercise where the judge has a great deal of discretion. And I agree, this is a situation where some judges are going to talk to the dogs, they're going to coo at them, they're going to give them, encouragement, and other judges are going to be completely hands off. And some judges are like, if the dog whines, it's okay as long as the dog doesn't bark. Some are going to want the dog to not pay attention to the, owner at all. So definitely know who your evaluator is with this particular exercise. But the rule books is the dog is not supposed to show undue signs of stress, such as constant pacing, whining, or barking. I have seen judges who are okay with a little bit of whining, but not, they have some magical line in their head where a certain amount of whining then goes too far. The helper can talk to the dog, but is not supposed to engage with it. Some people engage with the dog. Some evaluators I definitely have seen engage with the dog. And again, that's just kind of a separate thing. For Bouviers, I think in general, just treating this as a stay exercise is a great way to do it. And so that's how I taught it with Freya. This is also an example of just tethering, which I think is a great skill that dogs should have the ability to do. And that's, I joke, if you're a horse person, I say that Freya has a ground tether, because if I just drop her leash, she thinks she's like tied to the ground and can't go anywhere. So that's basically what she is here. I just dropped the leash kind of behind that little retaining wall we have, and she's stuck forever. So in the video, I'll show you, I'm doing like a variable reinforcement of coming back, rewarding her in that stay position versus on the release, which we talked about earlier. You can also practice rewarding your dog when the leash is handed over so that it's a positive association with being left, not a negative one. My family had abandoned me at this point, which is why I went to the tethering. Normally, you would have another person there. And when you're at home and you're practicing, you want to start out with the dog. You're not going very far. The dog can see you. In the actual CGC, you're going to be out of sight. So you need to then practice out of sight.
And you also need to practice leading the dog in different directions.
Yeah.
Because if they down and they're solid, sometimes you might have to, like, and they're facing out, sometimes you might have to like leave them and go backwards. So just practice that. And then when it comes to like the whining and barking, it is so evaluator specific. So I passed a German Shepherd that whined through the entire thing because the dog had whined through the entire test. So it was not a sign of stress. It was just a dog that leaked really bad because it wanted to do more. So yeah. I'm like, I can't fail it now for doing what it has done the entire time its handler was right beside it. So it just depends on the evaluator.
Yeah.
I've seen an evaluator like me, I passed a dog with wine the entire time. I've seen an evaluator fail a dog who, when the handler came back, jumped up and started pulling
Mm,
to get to the
yeah.
handler. So unfortunately, this one, like this one and the friendly dog are the two where they give you too much, I think too much discretion
Yeah.
on how to do
No.
it. Um, but like she said, when I do this one, I teach it as a downstay. It's it is I'm gonna face my dog away from you. I'm gonna down them. I'm gonna hand you the leash, but it's not gonna be tight. And I'm gonna walk away, and my dog's not gonna move for 3 minutes, and you're not gonna talk to him or touch him. Um, you can tell the helper if you need to, please do not pet my dog, or you can give them that advice. They don't have to listen to you, but you can tell them that. Just do not say, don't pet my dog because he will bite you, because then you will fail the entire test. Important safety tip. Never tell the evaluator that. Let's see, we just did the ground tether. Okay, so those were all of the exercises in the CGC. It took us way longer to go through all of them than it does to actually administer the test because we were
For
going through them
sure.
in minute detail. But once you kind of have the CGC stuff down, you can start moving on to the CGCA and U, and then you can also start doing the other things that are kind of the entry-level titles in AKC. Um, or rephrase that. The first two are entry-level. Trick Dog Elite is freaking hard. I'm not gonna, my dogs can't do Trick Dog Elite. But Melissa, if you want to go and talk about Trick Dog, who is the other one that CGC evaluators are allowed to test.
Yeah. So I really like the Trick Dog titles because you don't have to go anywhere to submit them for evaluation. So you can film these at home. They give you a lot of options to teach. The Trick Dog Novice is really pretty easy for most dogs to get. If you already have the CGC title, you only have to do 5 additional tricks on top of having the CGC. If you don't have the CGC, then you need to do 10. Either way, I think it's a very easy title to get. But what it does is give you some measurable goals that you can work towards with a puppy. So, and then you don't have to perform these in a distracting environment. You can if you go to a trial or event, but you can film them at home in your training room and then submit it for evaluation. Each of these levels has 10 tricks. A an expert tip is pay attention to the tricks. So if you use a trick in Trick Dog Novice, you cannot then use that trick in Trick Dog Intermediate. So you want to save up the more impressive tricks that are qualify for that intermediate and advanced, because some people will do a higher level trick in novice just to kind of make their 10 tricks, and then you can't use them again. So if your dog does all of these, they will basically end up with 40, 50 if you do the elite individual tricks. Now, there are some tricks that you sort of repeat because they get more difficult. So, like some of the tricks are scent based, and at the lower level, it's the dog has to find the scent or the treats in 3 hidden objects. And then at intermediate, it's 5 objects. So it's the same trick, but they increase the level of difficulty. So that is very important. So each of these levels has a whole list of pre-approved tricks. And then there is handler choice. So if you have a unique trick that's not listed on the level, you can pick 2 tricks that would fall under that. Read through them. Some of them are a little weird. Like for backup, the dog has to back up like 20 feet, I'm pretty sure it says, which is just insane. Like no other situation requires the dog to back up. I think it's 5 body lengths, but for 5 body lengths for a Bouvier is like 20 feet. So yeah, pay attention. Sometimes they're way harder than they would assume to be. Um, and you know, pick wisely. Um, let's see.
Next slide.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Like I said, these are great ways, and they're just kind of gives you a framework of things to work on. Um, if your dog is not environmentally sound or you're worried about reactivity, they're really great for still working towards an attainable goal, but not having your dog in a chaotic kind of trial environment. So these are some different tricks that I've taught the dogs. Up in the corner, we have Freya fake peeing on an object. I just thought that this was a really funny thing, and I like to tell her to go say hi and pretend to pee on somebody's leg because I think it's funny. Hopefully the video will cooperate.
Oh, is it not playing? Come on.
It's skipping over the good part. There we go.
There it goes. There we go. All right, which one do you want
So,
next? Spit paw or bounce?
uh, we'll go with bounce. Bounce is a quick one. So all of our Bouviers like to, or most of them, know what the Bouvier bounce is. I like to teach my dogs to do this because then it teaches them to jump up, but not forward. So I just put it on cue, and that's Gunter with his ridiculous gigantic beard doing the
That's
Bouvier
cute.
bounce. But that counts as a trick as long as it's a cued behavior, trained behavior. And then this is another more advanced one with Freya. So one of the tricks is basically to walk on a barrel. So would be the beginning of that trick because this has a little more texture and it's not a barrel. But she is walking forward with her feet. Her back feet are on the ground and she's moving the peanut forward. Also a really good core exercise for fitness.
The log roll.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool. I admit I do not like I have no tricks. My dogs don't have tricks.
Well, I
Like
mean, I think ultimately it's all tricks, right? A heel is a trick, a bite is a trick. It's all tricks, but some tricks have more purposes than others. But the fake pee thing still makes me laugh. I love it.
Goku has his trick dog intermediate. I did that during COVID because we were just bored. So I got him his trick dog intermediate. Um, but yeah, I am the worst. Do not be me. I'm the worst about they're competing in X sport. They are only going to learn the things that are in X sport, which is why my dogs suck at walking, doing loose leash walking and being
Well, I
generally
mean, I
good
think it
canine
ultimately
citizens.
it boils down to what you enjoy doing and what your dog enjoys doing. You know, Freya loves to train and she loves to learn new things. So, um, I think the fake peeing thing was during COVID and we were in Germany, so we were like hardcore lockdown. And it was a good exercise for me, even as a trainer, because it was a lot of shaping. And I was like, I just want to see if I can make her do this. Like, this is super complicated. But I think it is a good entry level because, like you said, if you're at home, you can do it at home. There's a lot of variation. If your dog has a natural retrieve, then that part of the test would be easier for you. If your dog likes to pick things up, or if your dog is happy to jump up on things, like the tricks are really accessible to many different dog personalities and trainer abilities at the lower levels. It does get hard towards the end.
Wyatt only wants to work that way. So let's go over. So we have our list of kind of some general tips that we have for training. Melissa, you do yours first.
Okay, so we already mentioned this a little bit, but the 3 Ds of dog training: distraction, duration, and distance. When you're training a behavior, you don't want to increase all 3 of those at the same time. You really want to pick one to increase. So if you're working on a stay, you're not going to work on building the time the dog stays and throwing a ball while they're holding the stay. Like, those are 2 separate things that you need to work at separately. I think that that's where a lot of people, they train a behavior, they say, oh, my dog can sit. And I get that a lot with puppy people come in and say, oh, my dog can sit and my dog can down. And I say, well, your dog can sit at home in the kitchen with a treat in your hand.
Yeah.
You know, that's not distraction. That's not duration. That's not distance. Can your dog sit when you're sitting on the floor and it's across the room? Does it understand that? So there's a lot of value in learning about the distraction, duration, and distance. But the biggest tip definitely is don't change them all at once. You're not going to do your dog any favors. Train the dog in front of you. And I think anybody who's had multiple dogs can really understand this one. Even if you have a bunch of Bouviers, all the Bouviers are going to have different personalities. R2 Guku. You know, like, so don't get frustrated if what worked on one dog doesn't work on the next dog. You just have to be adaptable and say, okay, well, maybe this dog likes to lure a behavior and the other dog, I need to capture the sit or the down. Be flexible. Don't be stuck in, well, this worked on the last dog and I put a CDX on it and this should work for every dog. It's not going to work for every dog. I thought it was funny because we both put this on here. Social media is the highlight reel. It is not reality. I know a lot of people that see these little clips and get, oh, well, my dog could never do that. Or my dog, you know, well, what you don't see is the 99 takes before that one take that gets posted on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. You don't see the years that it took to get that trick. You know, how many times did that the peeing on fake peeing thing was probably like a 4 or 5 weeks of training, just a little bit over, you know, every couple of days, little tiny things. All you see is that 10-second behavior, but it takes a lot of stuff to get there. So don't get disheartened by what you see on social media. Just focus on yourself, focus on your own dog, focus on having it be fun. I think one of the things that really changes a lot of people, and we did talk about this a little bit earlier, is using distinct markers. So a marker could be a click. A marker could be saying yes. In that video that didn't play very well, I used get it, which means that's a tossed treat for my dogs. You're going to have a separate word for a release to a toy. It makes it so that your dog knows what their reward is going to be, how they're going to get the reward, and it gives you time to give them the reward. That's the biggest thing that markers do. And that's what kind of like clicker training revolutionized dog training a little bit, because you're allowed to say, okay, I'm going to click or I'm going to say yes exactly when the dog is going to do the thing that I want them to do. And that yes is a bridge to you bringing them the reward. So sometimes when you don't have a marker word, the dog sits, you give him a treat. The dog might even be out of the sit coming towards the treat before the dog actually gets the reward. So then the dog says, did I get rewarded for the sit, or did I get rewarded for getting up and coming towards the treat? Marker words bridge that gap and help the dog understand what they're getting rewarded for, how they're going to get rewarded. And it makes training a lot easier. Have fun with your dog. Training is supposed to be fun. It's a bonding thing with your dog. It's something that gives you an opportunity to spend time with your dog. But if you're stressed and you're like, oh, I have to do this, your dog's going to know. You're not going to have a good training session. It's not going to go well. So don't train if you're in a bad mood or you don't want to do it. One of the reasons, that we talked about this is that getting into sports does help keep people motivated. If you have a goal, I want to compete in IGP, I want to title my dog in rally or in obedience, that informs your training. It gives you a pathway to follow of this is how my dog needs to be able to do these things. But it also gives you an attainable goal that you can go towards. So that, and I did say it doesn't have to be a title. It could be like, I want to take my dog to a cafe. I want to earn a trick title. But having a distinct goal will help keep you motivated for training, and it will let you know what you need to train.
I like that last one because I'm that person that if I don't have a deadline, then I get super lazy. Or like if I don't have a goal in mind, I'm like, I'll get around to it later, which is why I have to enter trials 6 months in advance so that I can get six. Because once I'm entered in a trial, right, I can't back out. I have to get stuff done, right?
You're committed.
Well, IGP trials are expensive.
Yeah.
So for me, some things that I think are really important to general tips is when you're training a behavior is one, understand what you want that finished behavior to look like and know how to break it down into its component pieces to be able to teach. So I always use the example of a retrieve. A retrieve seems like one behavior, but if you break down that one behavior of a competition retrieve, it's actually 11 distinct behaviors. It's 11 distinct components to that one behavior. So always think about when you're training things, how can I break it down to the smallest piece so that my dog can understand and build to the next piece? The other thing is keep it fun, right? You saw the videos of my dogs. It's tough. I managed to do it a lot. To be fair, but it's tough to be angry and not have fun when you're working with the dogs that enjoy working with you that much. So keep it fun, right? What's the point of doing it if you and your dog are not having fun? And speaking of that, not every sport is for every dog, right? Melissa and I were talking at the beginning. She has one dog that doesn't necessarily like swimming, so she doesn't have to do dock diving. She can do fast cat, or she likes tricks, right? So make sure that both you and your dog are always having fun in what you're doing. We both have this on there. Do not watch and do not compare yourself to TikTok and Instagram trainers, especially people who've got the sheepdogs, the Malinois, the Border Collies, the Dutchies. Those dogs have a type of ability to focus and to work and to bend themselves into positions that most dogs cannot do. And it is not fair to your Bouvier or to yourself to compare yourself to those dogs. So instead, follow and learn from people who've achieved what you want to achieve with the types of dogs that you have. Um, so follow people like me and Melissa and um, Michelle and Carla and some of the people who have Bouviers and who have done these things. I am the worst about posting videos where my dog screws up because I think it's funny. There's actually a video of me on, I think it's Global Working Bouviers, something like that, of R2 doing a retrieve and bringing the item back and hitting me in the ass with it. And she just does it like over and over again. She keeps bringing it behind me. And it's funny. So think about that. Another really important thing is to understand your dog's hierarchy of rewards. I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about recalls, is it's super important to understand how does your dog rate the type of reward that you're giving them? So do they think a hot dog is better than cheese? Do they think chicken is better than a hot dog? Do they think a ball is better than chicken? Do they think a tug is better than a ball? Right? Because once you understand that, then that gives you the ability to toggle arousal and drive on and off based on the type of reward that you're giving. And when you pair that with a distinct marker for the location and type of reward, you can have amazing control over the neurotransmitters that your dogs release when they hear those markers to make the reward event even better or make it to get them like crazy reward event like we would for a recall, or when I'm training a stay, keeping it a little bit calmer, a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Um,
And
when
don't
you
be
are
biased about it. I have people who are like, well, this is a piece of steak, so my dog should like it more than kibble. Well, that's your opinion, but that might not be your dog's opinion. Freya really likes crunchy stuff, so she prefers a crunchy kibble over like a piece of cheese, and for other dogs, it would be the exact opposite. So let your dog
exactly
decide.
my war bouviator, Ruffian, her favorite treat in the entire world are dehydrated bananas. She loves dehydrated bananas. Um, which also make a surprisingly good tracking treat if your dog likes them because ants don't really think it's food. Kind of weird. Um, when you are trialing or filming videos or doing anything like that, remember to breathe. There is nothing worse than going back and watching your video of an event and you're like, I look like I'm going to pass out. So remember to breathe and enjoy yourself. And then finally, kind of tied to train the dog in front of you, know your dog. Know not only when your dog it not know not only how to reward your dog or how to correct your dog, but also know how to read how your dog is feeling in that moment. We may think that our dog is having the best time ever, but they really aren't. Or we could think this is miserable, I hate this, but our dog is having the best time ever. So learn your dog, know how to read your dog. Bouviers are not the easiest dogs to read because sometimes we can't see the corners of their eyes. Sometimes they don't have tails. Sometimes if their ears are cropped, they don't have as much movement in their ears. And if they're in the traditional cup, the corners of their mouth are covered, so you can't really see a lot of tightening. But you can read your dog. Just make sure that you are listening to what they're telling you. All right, we are ready for our Q&A. Did we have any other questions?
I think
Or did we answer them all?
let's see. Diane said that they offered the CGC at the specialty last year. And I think the farm dog try as well. Yep. And that she likes to take dogs to Lowe's or Home Depot Tractor Supply for training.
Danica, can you?
Yes.
I have a kind of a question. My dog is really good with most commands,
Uh-huh.
sit, stay, heel, center, fetch, et cetera, et cetera. But when it's critical, for example, when she chases a porcupine or a deer or a cat, I
Hmm.
cannot get her to recall. Is there a solution to that?
So we can both answer. There's a because we'll probably have different answers based on our training philosophies. Um, First off is reward the hell out of it every time she does it correctly without the distraction. Two is you can keep her on a long line so that if she takes off, you have control over her. What I would use personally is for recalls, everything is fun and game and rainbows at the beginning, but I do layer pressure onto it with an e-collar because for me, if I'm walking around in my property and there's a copperhead and I call my dog back if they don't come back, that's a safety issue.
Yes.
So they have to understand if I say come, that there is yeah, you'll get a reward, but there is a consequence for not coming. And I don't want that consequence to be a $5,000 vet bill because that's more punishing to me than to them. Um,
Okay, so let
and
me.
right, the sports that I'm in, right, when I out or when I recall, right, it can be a safety thing, right? If I can't get them to let go and I can't get them to recall. So
Right.
I do layer correction on with an e-collar.
Now, what do you use? I missed part of what you said, but what do you use for correction?
So I personally, like the first 6 months of their lives, I keep them on a tether. So I keep them on a long line. At 6 months is when I start introducing an e-collar. So I like Educators, is the brand that I use. I like them. Like this is R2 was barking, so I have her one in here to keep her quiet. Um, they make a so this is the Educator Pro. The Educator Mini works too, but I like them because you can get really long contact points that can actually get to their neck, and then you can get this other thing that adds these like wings that kind of come around and holds it a little off their neck so that it makes it easier for them to breathe. I will use that starting at 6 months to start proofing the recall. Again, because I live on property. I can't, and we do have a lot of snakes here, and I
Yep.
cannot have them. Like if I say come back because there's a rattlesnake or there's a copperhead, I cannot have them blowing me off.
Right. Yeah, and that's the issue that I have. She's
So
good.
yeah, I would look into and see if you can find a trainer that is good with an e-collar, but it's really like people make it like this big thing. If you're using it only for recall, like Goku, the only thing he understands, the e-collar for him only means recall. And it is literally just to teach it, I put the e-collar on them, I say come, and then for him, when I'm teaching it, I hit vibrate, and then it vibrates until they get back to me. So they learn you turn it off, you turn off this uncomfortable feeling by coming back to me.
Yeah. And I think,
R2, R2's trained a little differently because I use the e-collar for more stuff with her. But basically, it's just they learn just like they're in control of they're in control of a reward when you're doing shaping and clicker training. When you use the e-collar, they're in control of whether or not a punishment happens.
Yeah.
right. So one of the things I do for recalls is a lot of times, like we were talking about earlier, that oppositional reflex, holding the dog back to let them come to you. But you also have to layer in them being rewarded and coming to you, because what happens is, like you're talking about a deer, then they're sitting there and they're like, well, I could chase this deer, and that's really rewarding to them. Or I could
Right.
go back and maybe get a cookie. So I actually kind of, in the dog can't fail situation, I'll put my dog on a long line, and I'll take them over to a little Tupperware full of treats, and I start feeding them out of this Tupperware. And then I close the Tupperware walk away with them, then let them go and they can go over and investigate the Tupperware because that's where the treat came from last time. And then I call them. If they don't come, then I'm going to use that long line to encourage them to come, just like Danika did in the video, just with a little pressure, and then reward like crazy. So it gives you like kind of setting them up of like, I have to leave something that's reinforcing to come to you. Another way that you can do that is like my daughter's poodle is obsessed with me. He likes me better than he likes her, which drives her crazy. But I am the high value item that she recalls him off of.
Yeah.
So I won't call him because I don't want him to not come to me when I call him, but I'll look like super exciting and he starts coming towards me and she recalls him and rewards the heck out of it. But a
Right.
lot of people fail to go that level of it, and then their recall fails in those situations.
Right.
And like Danica said earlier, I never call my dog unless I am 100% sure that they're going to come, because every time that they don't come, I always tell people that you've got to do like 50 times where they do come to make up for that one time that they didn't, because in their minds, whatever they didn't come to you for was self-reinforcing. Because if it was
Right.
worth it to come to you, they would come. So whatever
Right.
they chose not to come for, they got rewarded for not coming,
Though I
right?
will
They
say
got,
for things like not snakes, because snakes I always want immediately moving away from,
yeah.
but
Right.
for things like skunks, or well, skunks I want them moving away from too, but for
Yeah.
like
That's a different
I have
different
one that
cost.
chases horses. I have one that'll chase horses. Which is stupid because horses can kill them.
Right.
He just hasn't figured that they just haven't figured that
Yeah.
out yet. But I teach a very strong leave it command. So, and leave it for me means move your face away from the thing. Back up and move away from it. Um, so I teach a really strong leave it command, and that one again, I start I teach everything at the beginning in a very positive manner, but I will, because again, that's a safety issue, I will layer correction on that. And then if they take off chasing something, like chasing the horses, there is a chance even with correction, like even if I crank that sucker up to 120, they may still keep going because they're
Right.
just
Especially
in
a
such
Bouvier.
drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't recall them. I would do what's called an interruption cue, where I would ask them to down, because now they can at least still watch, but I stopped the chasing. I got them to
Right.
not chase because, right, the whole point, like, because I can use the e-collar not so much as a correction, but to kind of like click their brain back in when they get into that I'm going to chase thing.
Yeah.
But I still may not be able to get them back, but I can get them to down. I can
Yeah.
get an emergency down.
I
Um,
would be I would be more okay with that than, because I we don't have snakes up here. I'm in Maine, but
lucky bastard.
yeah, we have porcupines like crazy,
Yeah.
and or cats running across the road or whatever. And in those situations, I have literally no control over her.
Yeah. So you need to build it back up from the beginning, basically. I would actually start with a new word, because she has ignored your command and gone away. I would start from the beginning, train her like a puppy, be super excited, work on recall. Another thing that I do is I have two separate recalls. Like I have a formal recall where you better get your butt to me. You're going to come right up to me. And then I have I want you to move closer to me. And the one that's like, I want you to move closer to me, it's a little more forgiving because I just want the dogs to move away from what they're going and move towards me. And I'll start, praising them when they're kind of farther away. And that's the one that I'm going to use if I don't have that 100% confidence that they're going to come back to me. So I
Yeah.
still kind of reserve that the integrity of that recall cue, but I get the same thing that I want from them, which is to move away from wherever they are. Like Danica said, it's a safety issue. And those are the times where, you know, it, I want to have a really positive relationship with my dogs. I like positive training, but there are certain situations where I'm also, going to yell at my kid if they're going to walk into the street, right? So,
Yeah.
like you have to use common sense. We want to keep our animals safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah,
Thank
I would work on like basically we call them like an interruption cue,
Yeah.
which is teaching the dog to stop what they're doing immediately and do something else. Recall is the hardest thing to use as an interruption cue, unless the dog has just been conditioned and conditioned and conditioned to it their whole lives. But down is a really good one to teach. So you can do so like the way I teach what's called the emergency down or the down in motions is I will take something like a toy or a treat or a thing of food and I'll put it like at the other end of the room. I'll send my dog to it and then I'll call them back. And when they're on their way back, I'll tell them to down. They have to know how to do that first, right? They have to know, like, if I say plots, that means elbows and butt hit the ground.
Right.
But
Yeah.
once they know that, then I'll do that. And then eventually I'll move to when they're on their way towards the thing, I'll tell them to down. Now, because I use this for safety and because it also is a competition thing for me, I will also start with I will vibrate them a little as I start teaching it with the e-collar to teach them when I say down, I mean down from the
Good.
very beginning. Not a
Yeah.
lot, like again, right? I'm talking like just the vibrate or the tone to tell them there is, don't forget there is a consequence for this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop until you hit the ground. Um, and then eventually, right, then I'll do like the full set, I'll do like a full send away or something, and then I'll put the toy down there. Or for me, I like my test is can I put the helper down there and can I send them to the helper and stop them midway? Um, if I can do that, then I'm pretty sure I can call them back off a snake.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the snake is just fun because it's making noise and it's hissy and it's moving and it smells weird,
It's not
but they don't
nearly as
actually know if it's
reinforcing
going to be
as
fun.
the bite suit.
Yeah.
But
So,
to me, it's a safety issue.
yeah.
Whether it's the porcupine or the cat across the road or a deer, that it becomes a safety issue. It's frustrating to me that she doesn't come when I tell her to, but it's more worrisome that she's going to get hurt. And
Yeah.
that's my concern.
And it is. It's
Yeah,
just it's more the self-reinforcing behaviors are the hardest things to prevent and the hardest things to, break once they happen. Once a dog becomes a counter surfer and they take something off the counter for the rest of their lives, they're like, but that one time I ate that steak off the counter, right? And so you can't take that memory away from them. And that's, the challenge that you face and where you have to say, okay, if you're going to do this, there might be a negative consequence for making that choice because naturally, oftentimes chasing the cat, chasing the deer is going to be more rewarding than you could possibly be to them. So like if you don't just have that incredible history of reinforcement where the dog just kind of has an automatic response of like going back, it's an uphill battle for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully
Yeah,
that helps.
I
yes,
hope.
hopefully. Does anybody else have any other questions? Did we get them all?
Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Does anybody have any other requests for topics? We've got a couple ideas out there, but if there's anybody specifically has ideas, we'd be open to that.
Well, I absolutely love this format. It was awesome. And one of the things I would like outside of my recall thing would be contact information for in my area, Bouviers are fairly rare. And I would like to be able to talk to other Bouvier owners or go to Bouvier classes, catting, you know, anything.
George Quinlan is up there, and he's an excellent
Quinlan?
trainer. He has my dog. He owned my dog Goku's uncle, and he has R2's uncle. Um,
How
I'm
funny.
not sure where in Maine he is, but I know he's somewhere in Maine.
All right. I'll look for him. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can work on I think Michelle, I messaged you today about or I made a comment on like knowing where there are Bouvier events happening. I think I follow the herding and carting page. And people keep posting, look at these trophies we've got, and look, and I'm like, I didn't even know that trial was going on, and I'm like pretty in the Bouvier world, so I I've been thinking about how maybe we could make that kind of information more accessible through the clubs, having a list of all the events that are happening or something to make
Yeah,
it a
that would
little
be
bit
great.
easier.
Yeah. I hope you guys do another one of these. It was great.
We are looking to do that. We're trying to do, I think, carding for our next one,
Yeah.
um, or potential or scent work. We haven't. We got to get. We can't present everything.
Yeah, we've just got
This was our get the wrinkles out. Try
Yeah,
to see if it worked.
it was great. I mean, I very much enjoyed it.
well, we
Thank you.
appreciate you guys coming. Hi, Shelley. You are my neighbor in Lodi. Unfortunately, only for the next couple of days. We are moving to Virginia on Friday. So, yes.
I heard that. I started training with Dee Dee out at
Good. Yeah.
Seymour, and she was talking about somebody that she had worked with, and I figured it was you.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
I had a puppy for a couple weeks. I don't know if any of you had read about that, but my girl was not happy having the new addition. So
oh,
much tears, and she went back to the breeder after not even 2 full weeks. If I would have had maybe more guidance from somebody, maybe we could have kept her, but she's been an only dog her whole life. So didn't
yeah.
work. So anyway, we're back doing I started scent work, and we're just going to do stuff, and we're going to make her life the best we can do. And when she passes, then I'm going to look for another puppy.
Awesome. Well,
So,
Dee Dee's a great scent work instructor, and we've got the new DDT scent work program that she's helping to coordinate on the West Coast, and that's a lot of fun. It's more operational scent work versus AKC style scent work, so it's very cool.
yeah,
Hopefully, you'll get to do it.
Izzy, I mean, we just had our third class, and she's been doing real well. We've done a little bit of dock diving out there in the past, and we were in agility for a long time, and she has her CGC and her CGCU and her novice trick dog. So we did stuff prior to COVID, and then now she's just kind of old.
But scent work is great. Scent work is great for all ages, you really, because it's not too physical on the body, and it still helps work the brain. So I think that's great that you're taking the scent work classes.
Yes, and thank you for doing this. I really enjoyed it. It keeps me
Awesome. Thank you for
connected, and
coming.
yeah, like I said, looking forward to another puppy.
Yeah.
Well, thank
So
you.
I'm picking up my new puppy next week.
I saw that.
I'm not sure what I'm thinking. Trying to have 4 Bouviers, but Ruffian can't possibly live that much longer.
How old is she?
She's almost 12, and she's outlived everybody in her litter by like 3 years.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why she's still doing so well.
Your
But
puppy's
I will make
coming
sure
from
Carla.
Carla.
Yeah.
Yes.
Another working dog.
Okay.
My next Mondio ring dog. But I will make sure to post videos of puppy training.
I hope so.
So you guys can see. I will post unedited. Well, there'll be some editing because puppy teeth, and I will curse. But I will try and post some unedited videos of how I start teaching certain things. I am a little bit different than a lot of trainers that my dogs can't really do anything until they're like 2 years old. Like, as everything is putting pieces together, they don't see finished pictures of things until they're like 2 years old, which is a little weird for some people, but
No, I mean, I think that a lot of people feel that pressure and rush and do too much too soon with young dogs. I think that, taking a dog that's 2 or 3 or even 4 and entering it into, especially with the level of difficulty in, bite sports, um, that makes more sense to me, especially Bouviers, they can just be, puppies and for a long time.
they're useless
Working.
until they're 3 years old. They're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
absolutely useless.
Working lines, especially, they're just on crack until they're not, or always, I guess. But yeah, I think that that's a mistake a lot of people make is that, they try and do too much or they feel pressure, especially in the dog world. I think you just feel this like, why am I, pressure, external pressure of chasing letters or trying to, although you seem to be good at avoiding that, but the need to do too much too soon. But I think the more skill you have as a trainer, the more you realize it's all about foundations.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Hi,
Um,
ladies, it's Michelle.
Hi, will you do a
Hi,
carding one for us?
I will. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I've had so much uh, technology difficulties. Couple things I wanted to ask. Um, Thank you, first of all, for doing this. This is absolutely perfect. This was just lovely and very informative. I need to know, I don't know who said, Danica, if you're getting a puppy, you're a nutcase.
Yes.
Lynn,
I have a 20-month-old. I cannot make him stop biting. I cannot make him shut his mouth and stop biting. And I'm not just, I mean, he's a nipper. He gets excited, he opens his mouth, he just nailed me, and I don't know how to break that. I've never had a nipper.
that's a
How would
tough
you guys
one.
do that?
So, because I haven't really had any. My German Shepherd, I had a German Shepherd who did it. Um, but like
So,
usually when they're puppies, when they start getting excited and I think they're gonna bite, I stuff something else in their mouth.
We've tried that. I've tried the spray. I've tried the Vicks in the mouth. I mean, I have. He just can't. Now I'm gonna say he's 20 months old, a male, which I talk a lot on Facebook about his Twinkies. That is all coming in. God love those Twinkies. But he gets excited now. Uh, he he cannot control himself. He just cannot control himself. And I get a lot
um,
of that on me because I'm that hyper. But
so,
he'll see someone and they talk to him. Next thing you know, he's all excited. A lady put her hands in to rough his face and he nipped her. And I cannot make him stop doing that.
so especially in that situation, I would teach a incompatible behavior. So, if he gets super excited when people are coming up and petting on him, practice with him. So, have him when people come up, either have him, it kind of depends on what his training skills are. With somebody like Freya, I would ask for a chin rest where her head is going to be in my hand. If she's chinning on my hand, she can't bite at a person because she's doing something that's not compatible. With a young puppy, what I would probably do is just throw kibble on the floor.
Okay.
And then he's looking for all the treats on the floor. The person can pet him all over his back and he's not going to nip at her because it's incompatible. His head being down looking for treats means that he can't do that. And over time, it teaches them when somebody comes over to rough with me, my face is down and that's not going to happen. He's a
Okay.
young adolescent full of testosterone.
Ugh.
I think that some dogs are just mouthier than others.
Right.
And that definitely is like a genetic thing. Freya loves to put my arm in her mouth. And
Yeah.
she doesn't bite it. She's never like broken the skin, but it's like holding hands to her. It is super, super rewarding. She's not allowed to do it to anybody else. But she just loves to come over, cuddle next to me, and just like have my wrist in her hand and her mouth. It's like makes her crazy happy. So, but clearly he's not getting the like bite inhibition part of it if he's actually like nipping. So I
So
would kind of go back to puppy basics on that as well. You said you've tried stuffing something in his mouth. You've tried, what else did you say?
She did Vicks.
Oh,
so
like
I
Vicks
would
on
I
your hand so that if he bites you, it tastes bad.
She put her mic on.
oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, we did. I put it on my arm, so on everybody, because I can't have him dealing with my mother.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so we did the pepper. I put that cayenne pepper on
Mhm.
stuff, and that made him sneeze, and I thought that was inhumane. So we quit that. But yeah, he
I mean, it sounds to me like it is an excitement behavior.
it
It's when
is
he gets
it
super
is
excited. So that to me, especially at his age, would be a management thing.
okay. Well,
Prevent,
yeah, that's true.
yeah.
The other
So
thing you can think about is the find a thing. So, where's Tegan? On here, my friend's dog Tegan is a nipper. Um, she isn't actually depressed, but she does like to like put her teeth on you. And she's a Malinois, so people
Uh-huh.
don't like that.
yeah.
Right.
So she has a thing which is called find a thing. Um, which is when you get excited, go find something to put in your mouth. Go find a
Oh,
toy, go
I
find a
like that.
leash, go find a sock, right? So her
okay.
behavior is as soon as anybody comes towards her, is she's looking around trying to find the thing. And
Okay.
sometimes the thing is Linda's, jacket,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. My
still it
shoe.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't matter what the thing is. I do that with like when I'm raising SAR puppies for people. I teach them because a lot of them are Malinois who are genetically very mouthy. Um, I'll teach them. I give them a piece of wood. It's called a little wood, right? It's this piece of wood, and their job when they go outside, so they don't nip at me, is to carry that thing in their mouth.
Huh.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So
so and
that's just another like incompatible behavior. And
exactly.
it depends on the dog of whether maybe he starts to get excited and you send him to his place and he's got to sit in the place until he can calm down and come back out. But this one having something in his mouth, not all Bouviers like to carry things in their mouth, like unless it's like a bite sleeve. So or a ball, kind of depends on the dog. And that's where knowing what your dog likes and what will work for them is so important. But yeah, no,
I
I've
know.
definitely used that strategy as well.
Well, we actually spent a week at Jellystone with a dog named Sonic, whoever's brilliant idea that was, with 1,000 children and characters and, like all this, and not one issue with him. He is rock solid with things. And then all of a sudden he'll turn around and just jump on me and then bite me. And it's like, what the hey? I can't make him stop that. So I'm gonna have to redirect that
Yeah, I would definitely,
behavior.
and I think that, it definitely sounds like an arousal issue where he's, particularly if he's going to you, he's redirecting his frustration and his like excitement
Right.
and nipping at you. So in that situation, knowing that it's about to happen is super important. And that's what knowing your dog is super important. So you are then in the ability to stop it before it happens. Once
Okay.
it's happened, they're already kind of in that place, and you can, you can use a negative marker, but like they're so excited, it might not really matter. But if you can be like, oh man, Sonic is getting like really riled up right here. I need to put him in a down. I need to send him to go get a toy. I need to give him something as an outlet that is not my leg.
Right, right.
So
Isn't that-
the toy that Danica had with the ball, the
On a
tug
rope?
with the ball, yeah, that
Oh,
would be
yeah.
good for a Sonic.
Yeah, I have
Then-
I have
then
the
you can
tether
tuck
with
it.
the ball on it. Yeah, that may work. Okay. Very good. Thank you, ladies, so much.
No
We will
problem.
be in touch for the carding.
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome.